Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Amherst. I'm Reverend Michelle Buheit, the minister of this congregation. Today, I am joined in the virtual pulpit by Reverend Renee Ruchotzke, our congregational life staff person with the Unitarian Universalist Association. If all goes to plan, today will be our last online-only worship service as we gear up for in-person hybrid worship beginning next week. We will still offer online options, and those will evolve as we improve our technical capabilities, while simultaneously offering an in-person experience in our church building. There are still many unknowns in this pre-emergent time, following 16 months of closure due to the pandemic. This is a time of anxiety and incredible opportunity, and it is my hope that each of you will find the best way for you to be in relationship with this beloved community.
As we gather, we acknowledge that our church is built on occupied land that once belonged to the First Nations people of this region, the Haudenosaunee. Today, we also extend gratitude to all of the water protectors in Minnesota, where people continue to be arrested for protesting the construction of the Line 3 pipeline through the state. We say Nyahweh, thank you, in the Seneca language, to those arrested in the name of climate justice, and to all the organizations and individuals who are putting their bodies on the line for the healthy continuation of life on the beautiful blue boat we call Earth.
We begin our time together by lighting the chalice. The flaming chalice is the symbol of Unitarian Universalism, the light of truth, the warmth of community, and the fire of our commitment to bring more justice and compassion to a hurting world. Our chalice lighting words today come from Elizabeth Lerner Maclay. As drops of rain that find each other and build to become a track, a rivulet, a stream, a river, a sea, so are we drawn together. So are we fortunate to find each other. So are we bound together on this shared passage toward an unknown ocean and eternity.
Wake now my senses and hear the earth call. Feel the deep power of being in all. Keep with the web of creation your vow. Giving, receiving, as love shows us how. Be thou my vision, O God of my heart, not be all else to me, save that thou art. Thou my best thought, by day or by night, waking or sleeping, thy presence my light. Be thou my wisdom, and thou my true word. I ever with thee, and thou with me, God. Thou my soul shelter, thou my high tide. Raise thou me heavenward, O
worship today is from Braiding Sweetgrass, Indigenous Wisdom, Scientific Knowledge, and the Teachings of Plants by Robin Wall Kimmerer. Quote, in the Western tradition, there is a recognized hierarchy of beings, with of course the human being on top, the pinnacle of evolution, the darling of creation, and the plants at the bottom. But in native ways of knowing, human people are often referred to as the younger brothers of creation. We say that humans have the least experience with how to live, and thus the most to learn. We must look to our teachers among the other species for guidance. Their wisdom is apparent in the way that they live. They teach us by example. They've been here on Earth far longer than we have been, and have had time to figure things out. Our Time for All Ages this morning features Unitarian Universalist singer-songwriter Jim Scott. In the Rainforest Song, Jim sings one of his most popular environmental songs, describing the parts of the rainforest ecology: ground level, understory, emergent, and canopy.
On the ground level, turtles and leopards and snakes live in the shelter the rainforest makes. The ground is so soft and the air is so clear, with 300 inches of rain every year. Oh, let the rain feed the thirsty ground. Sing me the song of life you sing, such a beautiful sound. Oh, let the rain feed the thirsty ground. Sing me the song of life you sing, such a beautiful sound. And down in the ground, the worms and the ants nurture the roots of the flowering plants. And up in the canopy, life is a breeze. Orangutans swing from the limbs of the trees. Oh, let the rain feed the thirsty ground. Sing me the song of life you sing, such a beautiful sound. Oh, let the rain feed the thirsty ground. Sing me the song of life you sing, such a beautiful sound. And high up above, where the toucans fly, emergent treetops reach into the sky. There's more kinds of plants than anyone knows. Look out, there's a sloth hanging by her 3 toes. Oh, let the rain feed the thirsty ground. Sing me the song of life you sing, such a beautiful sound. Oh, let the rain feed the thirsty ground. Sing me the song of life you sing, such a beautiful sound. There's the understory, the understory, the understory, the understory. There's the ground level story, on the ground level story, the ground level story, on the ground level story, the ground level canopy, ground level canopy, emergent canopy, emergent canopy, emergent canopy, emergent canopy. Oh, let the rain feed the thirsty ground. Sing me the song of life you sing, such a beautiful sound. Oh, thirsty ground. Sing me the song of life you sing, such a beautiful sound. Rain come down, rain come down, rain come down, rain come down.
This is a reading from Gathering Moss by Robin Wall Kimmerer. Quote, "My former husband used to teasingly deride my passion for mosses, saying that mosses were just decoration. To him, mosses were merely the wallpaper of the forest, providing ambiance for his photographs of trees. A carpet of mosses does in fact provide this lustrous green light, but focus the lens on the mossy wallpaper itself, and the green blur of the background resolves itself into sharp focus, and an entirely new dimension appears. That wallpaper, which seemed at first glance to be of uniform weave, is in fact a complex tapestry, a brocaded surface of intricate pattern. The moss is many different mosses, of widely divergent forms. There are fronds like miniature ferns, wefts like ostrich plumes, and shining tufts like the silky hair of a baby. A close encounter with a mossy log always makes me think of entering a fantasy fabric shop. Its windows overflow with rich textures and colors that invite you closer to inspect the bolts of cloth arrayed before you. To pass hurriedly by without looking is like walking by the Mona Lisa chatting on a cell phone, oblivious. Draw closer to this carpet of green light and shadow, and slender branches form a leafy arbor over sturdy trunks. Rain drips through the canopy, and scarlet mites roam over the leaves. The architecture of the surrounding forest is repeated in the form of the moss carpet, the fir forest and the moss forest mirroring each other. Let your focus shift to the scale of a dewdrop. The forest landscape now becomes the blurred wallpaper, only a backdrop to the distinctive moss microcosm. Learning to see mosses is more like listening than looking. A cursory glance will not do it. Straining to hear a faraway voice or catch a nuance in the quiet subtext of a conversation requires attentiveness, a filtering of all the noise. To catch the music. Mosses are not elevator music. They are the intertwined threads of a Beethoven quartet. You can look at mosses the way you can listen deeply to water running over rocks. The soothing sound of a stream has many voices. The soothing green of mosses likewise. Freeman House writes of stream sounds. There is the rushing tumble of the stream running over itself, the splashing against rocks. Then with care and quiet, the individual tones can be discerned in the fugue of stream sound. The slip of water over a boulder, octaves above the deep tone of shifting gravel. The gurgle of the channel sluice between the rocks. The bell-like notes of a drop falling into a pool. So it is with looking at mosses. Slowing down and coming close, we see patterns emerge and expand out of the tangled tapestry threads. The threads are simultaneously distinct from the whole and part of the whole.
My husband and I have lived in the heart of our college town for over 15 years. We love being just a short walk from downtown, where we have a grocery co-op, restaurants, and a music venue. We bought our current house because we loved being in the heart of the city. We were looking for a place that had a yard with enough space and sun for a garden. To say that the house didn't have curb appeal when we bought it would have been an understatement. The backyard was all concrete and outbuildings. The house had a wet basement, nicotine-stained walls, and falling ceilings. The plumbing was outdated and the wiring was downright dangerous. The house renovations, though challenging, were all technical fixes. We could hire carpenters, plumbers, and electricians. We could watch how-to videos to repair the plaster and lay the flooring. A house is just a lifeless, static structure that isn't all that complicated if you have the needed skills and expertise. A house, being conceived of and made by humans, can be easily understood and altered by humans. It would have been tempting to approach the yard in the same way. We had to start by undoing the damage to the land from the previous human alterations. We hired a contractor to tear down the outbuildings and to pry out the concrete and haul it all away. We had an infestation of the pretty but stunningly invasive plant called fish mint. It took a summer of painstaking excavation to pull out the tenacious root system. We were faced with a decision. What do we do about the land in our backyard? We are surrounded by a culture that looks at land as a commodity, where the extraction of monetary wealth from land is protected by the highest laws of the land. Our culture looks at insects as pests to be poisoned. We look at wildlife as vermin to be removed. We look at trees and plants as ornaments to decorate our edifices. The value of the natural world has been subjugated to human desire. We have written rules protecting property rights, starting with our federal and state constitutions. We have laws that privilege extractive uses of property. This privilege to extract enabled the atrocities committed by enslavers. Today, it enables frackers to poison groundwater. We also have unwritten rules or norms. Look at most new housing developments. The first thing the developers do is clear the land of vegetation, they drain the wetlands, and they scrape off the topsoil. We may mourn the trees that have been growing and the wetlands that have been forming over hundreds of years, but the soil itself is a whole ecosystem with millions of microscopic organisms like bacteria, protozoa, and fungi, partnering with worms, nematodes, and insects. Our unwritten rules enable developers to turn living soil into dead dirt. Human greed is part of the story for sure, but there is a deeper problem here. That problem is human hubris, manifested as colonialism, patriarchy, and white supremacy, as well as many other linked oppressions. The beliefs that certain classes, races, or castes should be given dominance over others is part of the problem. The beliefs that we can depend on science and engineering to fix all of our problems we create is also part of the problem. But I think the problem is more fundamental. Living systems have their own sets of rules, rules that are grounded in our interconnectedness and mutuality. We hold dear the scientific method, but science assumes that scientists can be perfectly objective. We pretend that humans aren't part of nature's interconnection. We also have the problem that too many people, both believers and atheists, who think that humans are the pinnacle of creation and should dominate the natural world. We have a class of people who are used to being in charge. We have a class of people who are used to not being accountable to one another. We have a class of people who are used to making the rules of doing things their own way. Let's get back to the land in our backyard that had been entombed in concrete for decades. Around the same time that we bought the house, we started studying permaculture. Permaculture is often described as a gardening method, but it is really a way of observing and being in mutual relationship with nature. We learn the rules of nature by observing nature, by noticing patterns of wind, sun, and rain, by noticing habits of growth, by noticing the microclimates that are created by the contour of the land. I was so tempted to start laying out an attractive design, to bring in some dump trucks of soil, compost, and manure, and to rototill it into the land, like mixing together cake ingredients. I wanted to start planting. That's how things are usually done, after all. Those are the unwritten rules. Luckily, I had partners who were part of a support system in this awkward time of learning and transformation. both my husband and the permaculture community. So instead of imposing our will upon the land, we spent a year observing the land with only minor intervention. The first thing we noticed was a tenacious little tomato plant. It started growing in a spot that had been under one of the outbuildings. The little seed must have been under there for years, waiting for its chance to germinate. And with the encouragement of rain and sun, so it did. But there was little in the compacted earth to nurture it, so once it exhausted the stored energy of the seed and what little nutrients there might have been available to it in the land, it withered and died. It was clear from our observations that the land needed to heal. And we learned that the best way to build soil is to create the conditions where the land can heal and build itself. We learned that tilling disrupts the microscopic ecosystem that is in the soil and releases carbon into the atmosphere. Instead, we covered the whole backyard with about 18 inches of wood and leaf mulch that we hauled from our city's yard waste facility, load by pickup truck load. We planted cover crops that capture carbon and nitrogen from the atmosphere. We also welcomed volunteer weeds such as dock and locust that serve as natural restorers of soil. It took 2 years, but the plants, fungi, and microcritters did their invisible work and turned the mulch into a beautiful, rich, living humus. We observed with a scientific eye. We tracked where there was direct sunlight throughout the solar year. We noted how the frost impacted different parts of the lot. But there are other ways to observe, ways that are much more relational. We can observe in the way that Robin Wall Kimmerer looks at moss. You may have heard of Mary Reynolds, the mystical Celtic landscape artist that won a gold medal at the Chelsea Flower Show. Her guidance in the book The Garden Awakening taught me that I needed to listen to the land by engaging in a kind of walking meditation. And so I did. One way to think about our yard is that it had experienced trauma. And if you know anything about trauma, you'll know that the victim needs to be in control of the healing. So I cleared my mind. I walked in a spiral from the outer edges to the center, acknowledging the harm while listening with an open heart. Over time, a pattern emerged and the garden design flowed from there. We knew where to bury the nurse logs for our fruit trees and nut bushes from our observations, where to plant the sun-loving and the shade-loving plants. We've noted the changes in growth of each tree, plant, and bush like a doting parent. We've counted the dozen of bee species that visit our pollinator garden. We've been delighted by the plants that appear without our having planted them. We have continued observing, learning more about permaculture, and making adjustments. The land is now thriving and teeming with life, and we feel a deeper sense of the interconnectedness of nature. My deep dive into permaculture also has informed my ministry. There is a branch of permaculture called social permaculture, which I am bringing to congregations as part of my work. A lot of my work is organizational development, helping congregations understand themselves as living systems. Just as we are learning that a forest is not just a group of individual trees, we are also learning that organizations are not just a group of individual people. Before I talk about the patterns that create a healthy, mutual, life-giving community, I want to shine a light on the patterns that are unhealthy. We have inherited patterns of domination, exploitation, and oppression from the extractive mindset of our forebears. For-profit businesses and corporations try to extract as much short-term financial value from their workers as possible, often without consideration of what is healthy or sustainable, and at a huge human cost. These patterns also play out in not-for-profit organizations, where the staff is often overworked and underpaid. The difference is that they are exploited in service of the mission rather than in service of pure profit. These patterns can even show up in our congregations in how we approach the volunteer labor that is the lifeblood of our church communities. Many common idioms use the language of extraction, exploitation, coercion, or hierarchy. What is our message when we talk about the pipeline to leadership, a fire hose of information, burning the candle at both ends, or the rank and file of an organization? What is the meaning of these terms when we are trying to be beloved community? People come to our congregations in the hope of finding a place to thrive, of finding the equivalent of nutrient-rich soil that will help them learn and grow, to help them find and make meaning. If we ask that they use their own stored energy and don't offer nutrients, their relationship with the church will wither and die. Volunteering and other forms of service are a part of meaning making, but service needs to happen in the wider context of mutuality. All healthy, life-giving relationships between humans depend on healthy mutual communication. It's no secret that marriages and other life partnerships require lots of healthy mutual communication every step of the way. This is also true of our congregations. Our congregations need to be intentional about creating patterns and systems of healthy communication every step of the way. We know that healthy communication is mutual communication. Healthy communication means listening deeply to one another. Healthy communication in our congregations also means making space for a variety of voices. It means listening deeply to the dissenting voices and addressing their underlying concerns. We are learning from our anti-racism work that our inherited forms of congregational governance and decision-making include practices that reinforce systems of oppression because they reinforce existing structures of power. Robert's Rules of Order and policy governance are great for getting things done, but they are based on an ethos that is designed to prevent disruptions that could threaten existing systems of power. I know this from personal experience, both as the person with the gavel and as the person who was trying to have a voice when the person with the gavel didn't want to hear my concerns. One thing we have learned during the past year of pandemic and of protests is that existing systems of power need to be disrupted. Black and brown and indigenous voices need to be heard. Our ecosystem and climate can no longer be afterthoughts. Over the past year, I have been learning about and experimenting with different forms of decision-making and governance that are based in principles of social permaculture. The basic pattern or form of healthy communication within a group is the circle, which is a form that we already know from our small group ministry programs and our practice of peace circles. There is a form of governance called dynamic governance, or also known as sociocracy, that offers a way of flattening hierarchy, of disrupting domination by the few, and instead promoting diversity, equity, and inclusion. Creating opportunities for discernment and decision-making in a circle helps create an opportunity to bring mutuality and balance into a community. Open, healthy communication practices result in life-giving, creative communities of humans. As we begin to transition into our new post-pandemic normal, we have an opportunity to build resilience into our communities by building up healthy and inclusive communication structures, including circles. We have an opportunity to move forward in ways that are based in our values of mutuality and consent. We have an opportunity to be a model of beloved community that reflects both our Unitarian and Universalist values of radical love and radical inclusion. Let us widen our circle of concern by being that community. Amen and blessed be.
We
Thank you for joining us in worship today. I hope you have been inspired and uplifted by sharing this time together. If this service has touched your heart, spread the love by sharing the link with others. And please see the credits at the end of this service for information about the music and other worship elements. And do take a moment to visit our website, uuamherst.org, and click on the giving link, or text your gift to 833-987-1968. We extinguish our chalice with these familiar words. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Somewhere there are people to whom we can speak with passion without having the words catch in our throats. Somewhere a circle of hands will open to receive us. Eyes will light up as we enter. Voices will celebrate with us whenever we come into our own power.
Travel light and travel easy, till I see you once again. Travel light and travel easy, and remember I'm your friend. May the road rise up to greet you as you leave your past behind.